vote for this Democratic memo?
No rules. We don't talk about
committee business.
You did to Fox today.
And on Friday.
We don't talk about committee. You know the rules. We don't talk about committee business. And then one reporter says, "You did to Fox today." Pregnant pause, and then the other one goes, "And on Friday." House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes giving reporters the cold shoulder tonight, and reporters giving it right back to him. That was just moments after his committee voted unanimously to release the Democratic rebuttal to that GOP memo that was declassified by the White House on Friday. The Democratic version, the Democratic rebuttal, is now at the White House, where a 5-day window has opened during which the president can decide if he wants to block its release or not. And while we are following that story, we are also following breaking news tonight from the New York Times about the critical question of whether the president will agree to be interviewed by special counsel Robert Mueller. Quote, lawyers for President Trump have advised him against sitting down for a wide-ranging interview with special counsel Robert Mueller. According to this new reporting in the Times tonight, the lawyers who want the president not to sit down with the special counsel include John Dowd, and also Mr. Dowd's deputy, Jay Sekulow, who you've probably seen on the Fox News channel if you've ever seen him anywhere. But apparently the president's lawyers are divided on this subject. Quote, one of the few voices arguing for cooperating with Mr. Mueller is Ty Cobb, another one of the Russia lawyers for the president who actually works in the White House and is considered to be White House staff. I will say I get the president's lawyers having varying advice for him on this subject, but do they get to decide? If the president wants to, and he said publicly that he wants to, can he just overrule them and do it? And even if the president decides he doesn't want to, and his lawyers don't want him to, the special counsel have the ability to compel him to testify anyway? Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell, who's a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman Swalwell, it's nice to see you. Thank you for being here.
You too, Rachel.
Let me ask you about the Democratic memo. This is something that you Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee, I understand, have drafted that's essentially a rebuttal to what the Republicans on the committee released on Friday. Is it fair to understand it that way?
Yes, and it's a document we hoped would never see the light of day, but it's the only way, I believe, to cure the poisonous rhetoric that the Republicans have put out with respect to this investigation.
The White House, as I understand it, they've got a 5-day window now during which the president could decide to block the release of this information, at least to block the means, block this information from being released by the same means that the Republican memo was released by. What do you expect will happen during this 5-day period at the White House? The president has been telegraphing a lot of disdain and anger toward you and your fellow Democrats.
Yeah, Rachel, if the president wants to be honest with the American people, he will allow a memo that's free from any political edits. You know, we have asked the Department of Justice something the Republicans did not, which was to review the memo if there's any national security risks of information getting out, but to do so in context of what is already out there. Again, as we said, we think the only antidote to the undermining they have done would be for the American people to have a full picture of what happened, and then most importantly, for us to move on and do our job and restart interviewing witnesses in this investigation.
The way that you're describing the sort of damage done by what the Republicans released on Friday, what the president okayed, if the president blocks your memo, blocks the release of it, and that is within his power to do so, at least as far as the White House goes, I understand there is another path toward releasing this, wherein the entire House would take a vote on releasing this matter, and then it would either have to be read into the congressional record or maybe it could just be released directly. Would you expect that if the White House blocks this, that's the route things would go?
I would also expect that Devin Nunes would be the person who stood on the floor and asked his colleagues to support that, because he supported it today in the committee. But, Rachel, I also am worried, though, that a dangerous precedent is being set here by releasing information to the White House, because they are giving the White House evidence that exists in the case. Again, we want our memo out there just to give the full picture, but we can't go down this road where we are giving subjects and witnesses in an investigation evidence that investigators hold very, very close. And I'm afraid that that is done intentionally so that the Trump team knows what's out there, and I think that's why they continue to pursue the selective release of committee transcripts and information held by the Department of Justice.
Do you believe that the information that they released on Friday was designed to or would have the effect of interfering with a counterintelligence investigation or any of the criminal investigations that are ongoing? Do you think it has been that it will do some harm?
It will do harm. And, people have said, well, no sources and methods were disclosed. They were disclosed. But the argument that we're making is just because they were publicly known because of press reporting, it's never been the practice of the Department of Justice to acknowledge sources and methods. So Mr. Steele's identity was disclosed. His longstanding history as being a source was disclosed. So when we need people to come forward and be sources in anti-terrorism cases, they're going to think twice and worry that their cooperation could be outed because of the political winds.
One last question for you, sir. I understand that Steve Bannon, former White House strategist and the man who used to run the Trump campaign, has been issued a subpoena to appear before your committee tomorrow. This would be the second or third time to get him in behind closed doors for questioning. Do you actually expect him to be there tomorrow?
I do, Rachel, and I expect my colleagues, if he does not show up, to issue and start contempt proceedings, because he is the only witness where they moved quite expeditiously. When he refused to answer questions, they gave him a subpoena within an hour. I don't know if that's because he's made enemies on the committee with some of the work he's done in the past, but every witness should be shown that type of dogged investigative interest. But if he does not show up tomorrow or does not answer our questions, I think he needs to be held in contempt.
Has his testimony been deconflicted with the Mueller investigation? I understand that there's sensitivity about trying not to interfere with an ongoing criminal investigation. Is the Bannon testimony been the subject of negotiation with Mueller's office in terms of him being cleared to testify?
That's something that Ranking Member Schiff and Mike Conaway sort out, but that has never been a reason given to us. What we've been told is actually, I think the worst of all reasons, is that the White House does not want him to talk. They're not asserting executive privilege. What they're doing is something worse. They're standing on no privilege and saying that he can't tell us anything that happened during the transition, once he joined the White House, and once he left the White House. And so that's actually a privilege without any legal authority.
Congressman Eric Swalwell of California, member of the House Intelligence Committee. Really appreciate your time tonight, sir. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, lots more to get to. Very busy news night, and we've got somebody who's a really big deal here tonight for the interview that's coming right up. Stay with us.